My name is Kate Krouse, and I'm a biology teacher at Osborne Park High School in Manassas, Virginia. As part of my Master of Arts in Educational Technology program at Michigan State University, I designed a lesson for my 9th grade pre-AP biology students that incorporated elements of social constructivist learning theory and allowed me to explore how differences in students' prior knowledge and past learning experiences resulted in differences in their current learning. This video is divided into 3 main sections. In the first section, I will identify key features of social constructivist learning theory. In the second section, I will discuss the components of my lesson and how they reflect social constructivism. In the third and final section of the video, I will provide evidence from the lesson to suggest that differences in student prior knowledge affect current learning. Social constructivism is an approach to teaching and learning that was developed by psychologist Lev Vygotsky. One of Vygotsky's main contributions to social constructivism was his concept of the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development is the range of knowledge or skills that the student can acquire or develop only with the aid of a skilled helper like a peer or teacher. To help students learn in the zone of proximal development, social constructivists maintain that collaborative learning can enable students to better construct knowledge. Social interaction allows students to vocalize their understandings as well as clarify and deepen these understandings. Teachers can also help students to learn in the zone of proximal development by scaffolding the learning process. Just like scaffolding used during the construction or maintenance of a building provides support for work crews to ascend to higher levels, scaffolding by a teacher, in the form of guiding questions, prompting, etc., can support students during the learning process. As students deepen their understanding, the support should be gradually taken away to enable more independent learning. I designed my lesson using the 5E model. The lesson is broken down into 5 parts: the engage phase, the explore phase, the explain phase, the elaborate phase, and the evaluate phase. The lesson focused on the mechanisms behind breathing and the functions of various structures in the respiratory system. The primary learning objective for the lesson was as follows. The student will be able to thoroughly and accurately describe the causes of inhalation and exhalation. During the engage phase of my lesson, students answered pre-assessment questions individually to determine and reflect upon their prior knowledge of the functions of various structures in the respiratory system and the causes of inhalation and exhalation. Once they had answered these questions individually, they made additions and changes to their answers after discussing them with small groups of 2 to 3 people. This portion of the lesson enabled me to assess each student's level of understanding so I could determine the level of scaffolding needed. Students were also able to collaborate with one another when they discussed the questions in groups. During the explore phase of my lesson, I showed students a simple animation depicting the movement of various structures in the respiratory system during inhalation and exhalation. Students made observations of the animation individually and made preliminary inferences regarding the causes of inhalation and exhalation before we discussed our observations as a class. During the class discussion, I provided a high level of scaffolding by asking guiding questions to help students clarify and extend their understanding.
Is it shortening as it's moving down, or is it lengthening as it's moving down?
During the explain phase of my lesson, I used a PowerPoint presentation to directly teach students vocabulary terms for the structures they had seen in the animation so that they could construct explanations in later portions of the lesson using specific terminology. During the elaborate phase of my lesson, students designed and constructed models of the respiratory system using materials like plastic bottles, balloons, and straws. They were given basic instructions, but no details as to which materials represented each structure in the respiratory system. Students received a medium level of scaffolding as they designed their models of the respiratory system. They received general feedback as they drew out their model plans in the form of questions like, how can you show that the pharynx is the only opening to the lungs? Or, can you explain why you needed to create a tight seal between the balloon and straw? After building their models, students were asked to manipulate their model to show the process of inhalation and exhalation. They were asked to explain why pulling the diaphragm down caused inhalation and why pushing it up caused exhalation. During this time, I circulated around the room, providing a low level of support and prompting.
Why does the lung fill with air when you pull the diaphragm down?
When you pull the diaphragm down, it causes a vacuum, which is a deficit of air, so it needs to pull in oxygen.
During the evaluate phase of my lesson, students reflected upon their understanding and growth throughout the lesson, as well as the help they received from other students in their group. Essentially, students were actively considering the contributions all group members had made to the development of the model and the explanation of inhalation and exhalation. While reading through student worksheets, I noticed that students' prior learning experiences significantly affected how they developed their understanding of inhalation and exhalation. For example, one student with a background in physics and robotics wrote, contracting the balloon diaphragm causes a vacuum, and the deficit of air causes air to be pulled into the straw trachea during inhalation. She directly expressed that her concept of air pressure and vacuums had been developed as part of her work with the school robotics team. She stated that she had supplied the idea of vacuums and air pressure for her group to discuss. Other students without a strong background in physics expressed how they needed the help of their group members to develop an explanation of inhalation and exhalation. One student wrote, my group members explained to me that empty space needs to be filled with matter, so when the diaphragm moves down as it contracts, air goes in. After the assistance from his group members, he was able to construct a very coherent and accurate explanation of inhalation and exhalation. In conclusion, my lesson incorporated scaffolding and group learning, both of which are aspects of social constructivism, to help each student learn within his or her zone of proximal development. As evidenced by the reflections written by students during and after the lesson, students' prior learning experiences affected the extent to which they could construct correct explanations of inhalation and exhalation on their own. Some students struggled to construct explanations on their own, but were able to do so with the help of their peers. It is amazing to be able to directly correlate student growth with group learning, and I plan to incorporate meaningful collaborative opportunities in my instruction more frequently in the future. Thank you.